Welcome, Anna.
Hi, nice to see you.
I'm intrigued by your surname. Hungarian, I know, but
Oh yeah.
are you Hungarian or is it just your marriage connection?
My mom's side actually.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
At one stage I learned Hungarian, but
Mm.
it's very rusty.
I made a few attempts to learn a few words and it was hard to pick up.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique language.
Yeah.
Welcome, Justine and Melissa.
Pam, how are you?
I'm very well.
Good.
Justine, I was thinking about you. We haven't had breakfast in a while.
No, I have you on my list to call. You got your haircut since we last.
No, it's pulled back.
It's pulled back.
Right.
Well, it still looks good.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll talk at some point. How's that?
Okay.
And Dave, I also wanted to say hello to you. You're also on my list, but what can I tell you?
I think you put fear and doubt into
no,
people's
it's not
minds when you're
fear.
saying you're on your list, Justine.
This is not a threat.
Oh, Justine's a pussycat.
Yes, I'm one of the easiest
Right.
people you'll ever want to know.
You know where you stand with her. She just tells
That's
it the
true.
way it is. So
Yes, but I'm not dangerous.
right.
No.
Okay, then I guess we have a quorum. And Sarah, thanks for joining. I thought you were going to be late tonight, so that's great that you could join us in a timely way. So I'm just going to change cameras here because I'm seeing that I'm going to have problems if I don't. Okay. Great. Then I think I'll just proceed to open the meeting. Here for a sec. So, good evening. This public meeting of the Dover Warrant Committee is being conducted remotely in accordance with the temporary provisions of the Open Meeting Law. We're convening via video conferencing using the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, so take caution what you show on screen, as others may be able to see it. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. To open the meeting, can I get a roll call of members in attendance? Woody Weiss.
Present.
Jerry Chen.
Present.
Melissa Herman.
Present.
Marty Howard.
Present.
Sarah Cadena Kinney.
Present.
Janet McCormick.
Present.
Steve Migalski.
Present.
And Peter has really put a wrench in the works tonight. He isn't able to attend. He's ill. I never sort of planned on Peter being ill, so we have to find somebody else to write the minutes. Do I have a volunteer?
I can keep minutes. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate that. Okay. Then I'd also like to welcome Robin Hunter, our liaison from the Board of Selectmen. And I notice we have some other guests, Dave de Havilland and Justine Kent Urtam, and Anna Nodge from the Conservation Commission. Sorry, I should have said Nagi, I suppose. So let's proceed. I guess I should start with asking for citizens' comments. Hearing none, let's proceed. I would we have two sets of minutes to approve this evening, or to discuss and modify as needed. But I suggest we leave that until the core business of the day is over. And I'd like to sort of move directly on to the proposed warrant article to transfer town-owned land to the Conservation Commission. Okay, well, we've got the presentation up there, so I'll leave you to it.
Yeah,
Welcome,
thank
Anna.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This may look familiar to folks, especially to Justine, I stand on the shoulders of giants here. This is a project that has been ongoing for many years now. The effort here is to collate a bunch of properties that the Open Space Commission and the Conservation Commission have recommended to the selectmen for transfer to conservation. It's a couple types of properties, either tax taken properties that have some sort of conservation value, they're wetlands, they're adjacent to wetlands, or especially more interesting in some ways are properties that are deeded to the town for the purposes of conservation, but aren't like allocated to the Conservation Commission. So this article sort of coming together as I've been working through the logistics of this. So currently town council is working on dealing with, verifying the takings and title references, but the draft language is there. It may change, but I suspect it will not change significantly since I've heard it is relatively boilerplate. The link on the slides will open up a version that'll look, I think, more like what I'm going to recommend formally, but it's basically the table we'll go through. Couple keynotes that don't show up in the language. There's no acquisition happening here. This is already land town owns, and maintenance that is happening is already either not happening or being done by the Conservation Commission. So it's pretty net neutral. But I just wanted to run through the different properties and make sure everyone was familiar with them. Yes. The first section I want to talk about is these town-owned properties. There's a mixture of them. This is the vast majority of the acreage is here, stuff that has been deeded to the town for conservation purposes. You see a little summary on the side. We'll go through some maps, but it's largely stuff for passive recreation or for water that we simply could end up with the Conservation Commission and should. So we can go to the next slide. Yeah. First one to talk about is the town well. So I learned in the process here, we have a town well that could be managed by the water department, which does not exist. So this is kind of an organizational effort to just move this to conservation. It is adjacent to DLCT, Dover Land Conservation Trust, so it does have additional conservation value. I'll run through pretty quickly. So the next one. This is land. You can see the Ponzi land 5-181 right off of, right in there near adjacent to Chickering Farm. This has been deeded for conservation specifically. And so it seems like it reasonably could end up with conservation. It's a good chunk of space. So it's kind of an important property. Next slide. Valley Farm, many folks know is a big section of land off Main Street. You can drive past. We're excited to be putting up a sign relatively soon, but I'm not quite sure what soon means. Two of these, this is a property that is 3 lots, of which the Conservation Commission currently maintains by mowing annually. It's just one of our standing operational budget items, but the vast majority is actually owned by the selectmen, not owned by conservation. So this also has been recommended over the years by Open Space and Conservation. All of these are been recommended repeatedly. So this is a sort of important chunk of Valley Farm. Next slide. Macintosh land. So this area is actually along the Snows Hill Trail Network and connects to a right of way. So it's pretty important for maintaining Snows Hill trails. Also nearly 30 acres, and it too has both the conservation open space and passive recreation. So there's really a lot of important reasons why it should be moved specifically. This one is the last of the town recommended slides. So Bridge Street, this is actually an interesting little chunk of land that the town purchased. Actually, all these were deeded specifically. This one was purchased by the town for conservation. It's right along the river, right next to the Bridge Street boat launch, which already is conservation land. So it seemed like it's contiguous. It's literally on the river, which is an important part of the Fisher Brook drainage. So this little like 4 acres we're recommending as well. Anyone have questions on this part halfway through? Okay, that's taken. So these are a handful of properties that have tax taken foreclosures over the years that have also important wetlands. So that's mostly why they were recommended. There are other properties the town owns in this category that we're not proposing this year. They are certainly possibilities, but we just wanted to stick to the conservation value ones here. So the first one is Chickering Drive. Again, you can see the little 5-177. That's the property. You can see it's just sort of right off Chickering Drive. It's a handful of acres. I think I left the number off here, but I can grab it. We're recommending this one as well as the next. We can skip one. Yeah. So this one, these are two that appear on this slide. There's a little tiny triangle. Little tiny triangle up at the top right. That's Wakeland Road. The lot behind it is wet, and so that particular area we're recommending because development there would impact the lot adjacent. Then Main Street also, you can see, is right next to that street. It's a relatively small acreage, but again, it's like, right squeezed in on wetlands. We can do the next one. So Wilsondale, this one can be a little tricky to pull out, but it's there to the far right. You can see it's between a conservation restriction and Hale Reservation. So in addition to having wetlands, endangered species, and draining into the Charles River, it would connect conservation land. So it's 3 3/4 acres, sort of right there, sandwiched between. We're getting to our last couple. Dedham Street. So this one, people probably drive by and know it pretty well, but this one also drains straight into the Charles. You can see that orange section is floodplain, so it would be pretty difficult to develop anyway. And someone's driveway, the neighbor's driveway, actually goes through it, but it's 10 acres of valuable conservation land that Open Space and Conservation have recommended for transfer. And our last parcel is Grand Hill Drive, which is actually kind of what kicked off this project again. So this is a series of properties that are wetlands. One of them has a right of way and access to DLCP, and the Algonquin pipeline runs through the whole thing. But I kind of picked up this project when we found a bunch of trash on this particular property, and I was like, how do we clean it up? Well, it's not conservation land, so it's like, well, what are the logistics of that? The trash is now clean, but it seemed like it was a good time to come back and revisit the project. So those are the properties. This has been an effort. It hasn't changed dramatically since the first recommendation in 2004, but after a series of memos and discussions between the boards, then I think in 2014, 2016, 2023, we're back around, and I talked to town administrator and town council is like, yeah, this has to be a town meeting. So here we are. We are recommending these for transfer to finish off this project.
Okay, thank you, Anna. I guess I have a general question to start with.
Yeah.
Why do you need to transfer the land to the trust? Why can't it just continue as part of town property and something that's managed by the Conservation Commission?
Yeah, good point. I should have covered that better. Two things. One, we have a trail maintenance and a land management budget. It's supposed to go specifically to Conservation Commission land. And so currently we're kind of spreading it around the town, the extent to which it's happening. And we're actually trying to build out our land management efforts. We're doing strategic plans, and I'm heading up a sort of a land management committee, but also one of the benefits of moving it to conservation is since it's currently being treated as conservation land, if it's put in charge, if the Conservation Commission is in charge of it, not only are we, using our budget to maintain correctly and, the right line items, we're not allowed to develop it. So it will continue to be conservation land. But right now, the town is an owner and can do whatever it needs to do with the land it owns.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you mentioned there are other potential properties that could have been included, but you decided not to. What criterion do you use to decide which to include and which not?
Yeah, the criteria was specifically trying to go for conservation value that came up within the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction, which is basically just wetlands. So these other properties were landlocked, or they had interesting ledge, or they might have just been good and developable land that maybe the town should develop. But all of these seemed like a headache to develop if the town wanted to do something, and more importantly, they had valuable resource areas, so it seemed like they were worth protecting.
Okay. So I'll throw it over to the floor for the copious questions. Do I have any questions from anybody? Dave.
I do have a question for you. The Church Street well was in there, and the one right after it, which I couldn't write down fast enough, also was gifted for conservation or water. And my question is, if the Concom can't develop properties, which would make sense, would this preclude the town from using those two parcels if we ever need to develop a well source in the future?
Ooh, that's a good question.
So Dave, I believe those are the contaminated wells. So
that's Church Street. They're contaminated now, but there's another one that was after it that was deeded for both water and conservation. I just want to make sure that we're not inadvertently precluding the town from using that in the future as a water source should we need it.
That is a very good question. I will have to check with town council. My instinct is no, but I don't want to be 100% on that. So let me check, and can I email someone when I get back? Should I email you, Cam, or Dave?
You could just email Cam. I mean, I think it's a simple question that
I need to know that. That's a good point.
Thank you, Anna. Justine, you have a comment?
Am I allowed to speak?
Well, we're not really following strict committee rules here. We should tell you to keep quiet, but hey, Dave's already spoken, so it's only fair that you should.
Well, you know me, but some other people don't. I think I've been on the Open Space Committee for approximately 30 years, Dover Open Space Committee, 20 plus years as executive director of a regional land trust. But I'm here, and I have also done special projects for the town. Many of these properties that Anna referenced have been on lists, including, I think, a memo I wrote probably 20 years ago about.
I got it on my Google Doc. 2004.
I mean, we don't work fast around here. I mean, but anyway, most of those properties I have no problems with whatsoever. But just for context, the Ponzi land, which is on Haven Street, up the street from where I live on Haven Street, I think it was the first town meeting I ever attended in Dover. We bought our property in 1976. I don't remember exactly when Ponzi was, but I know it was owned at that time by a Brookline developer who wanted to put in a lot of houses. I don't recall that it was per se a 40B, but it was definitely going to be a lot of houses, and I was thrilled. I mean, I didn't know there were towns like Dover that bought land for conservation and water. And then, so I just throw that out there that it, I think was put in the language of town meeting in order to, and in those days, people at town meeting did not vote that much for land conservation as they tend to do now. In fact, some of you probably know this, but maybe many of you don't. The whole Donnelly property was another town meeting I went to. And that the town had a chance to buy the whole thing and did not. Okay, so water, and I've also been on the water committee under the Board of Health. I think that's an excellent question that Dave raises because Dover's the big picture is that Dover is part of the 35% of residents in the Commonwealth that are not on the MBTA, not the MBTA, different.
The MWRA.
The
Yeah.
MWRA, and what our long-term, and we're supplied primarily, as you know, by private wells and also by Aquarian, which is local water. And we're similar to Medfield, for instance, that uses its local wells, et cetera, et cetera. So those 35% of us on the Commonwealth may have to do something long-term, and I think Dave's point is well taken. I don't know what that long-term thing is anymore, and Rob and I know the Board of Selectmen have presumably now taken this over since the Board of Health no longer, as I understand, does this. But, you know, as you know, 3 concepts have been floated over the years, one of which is for Dover to join the MWRA. Another concept was, of course, for Dover to turn everything over to Aquarian. And a third concept was for Dover to dig its own wells. And I know that the Valley Farm area, which is right near Ponzi, but not adjacent, specifically adjacent, was one of the areas that has been discussed over the years, as well as the town land 46 Springdale, which is very close to the well fields that off of Knollwood that are owned by Aquarian. So I think that's an excellent point about drilling, and I don't know the answer. Okay.
Yeah, it'd
but
be good to get some clarification on that.
Yeah.
for
yeah,
sure.
I think you should at least clarify those parcels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Any other questions from the Warrant Committee?
I'll ask what might be an obvious
Yeah.
question, but given that the purview of this committee is primarily financial, I assume there's no financial component to this or any impact on the financials of the town, and or I don't know, the Conservation Commission is not going to need extra money to maintain these lands or anything like that. It's just strictly a kind of a non-financial warrant.
Yeah, we're not expecting to need more money for this. We're like, everyone in conservation has been treating this largely as a bookkeeping problem. It's in one department, it should be in the other. I don't expect that it should change any maintenance budgets. No one has discussed increasing maintenance budgets. There's no cost, minus the town council effort, there's no cost to transfer the properties.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Please.
Okay, well, Nojon Sepen Kursanam Anna, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. And you're welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting if you so desire, but of course, there's no compulsion whatsoever. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thanks, Alison, for that.
Okay, now we move on to the other item that I foreshadowed for tonight's meeting, the review of the town budget as it currently stands. And I know that Robin has been working on trying to come up with a way of presenting the budget in a transparent and simple way, so that when we get to open meeting and to town meeting, the budget is where we are actually have increases, they become very transparent in what is increasing and what isn't. And I know you've been really drilling down on that, Robin, in the last few days. So would it be too much of an imposition from me to ask you to give us your interpretation of where we stand right now.
No, not at all. So first, I think we need to take a step back and remember just exactly what we're trying to do here. So over the last 3 or 4 years, our main goal as a town has been to increase at a slow rate our tax rate. And, the way we do that is twofold. First, it's to be conservative and to ensure that we keep our spending intact. Secondly, it is not maximizing our tax levy. So for those of you that are new on the committee, the tax levy is basically all the revenue that we get from primarily property taxes in Dover. And that by state law increases by 2.5% a year. And one of the things that we have done in the town over the last couple of years is not to maximize that. So not to tax everybody or not to spend up to what we bring in, because it's a way for us to ensure that, we're managing our expenses. We also have had what we call free cash, and we, over the years, have built up some free cash. The way that is built up is by in municipal accounting, which is all cash-based. What you don't spend gets returned to this free cash fund. So what we've done for many years in Dover is take some of that free cash and help reduce our tax rate. So in essence, we use last year or prior year's funds to fund the current year budget. We also, so one of the things we looked at with Warrant and the Board of Selectmen worked together, and we said we have a significantly large amount of free cash. So what should we do with that free cash? Should we give it all back to the town? Are there better uses for it? So at the end of the day, what we determined was that we should look, first of all, to maintain our AAA rating, we need to have on hand about 10% of our tax levy or the revenue that comes in as free cash. We also need reserves, because that's what AAA rated communities have. So many communities have reserves, which are akin to a savings account, that fund future or liabilities that are building up, such as capital. We know every single year we're going to have to replace items. Professional asset managers have what they call a replacement reserve. So every year they're putting in X amount of money into this replacement reserve. So when it comes to replace their roof, they already have the money. And for us, we're trying to do the same thing with our capital reserve. So we, we know we want to maintain our buildings. We know that we're going to need to replace trucks and other things. We also know that there's infrastructure that we need to fix. So we looked at all our free cash and we allocated some towards capital, because we have some large capital expenditures coming down the pike. So we agreed to put $600,000 in a capital reserve fund. We also made the determination that we wanted to fund Dover's share, only Dover share, in a trust fund of the regional OPEB. So that's retiree healthcare benefits The plan at the regional level is the funding is very low. And we're gonna, these are obligations that we've accrued over the years. So we said, let's take some of that extra cash and put it into this trust fund with the goal that we will get to a 60% funded rate. And that's what we've been doing. We've slowly been doing this. So we still have some large unallocated free cash. However, it has been deployed per se, because we know we're going to use it for certain things. One of the things we also agreed to use it for was to offset the some of the capital for the Carroll Community Center. So for those of you who may or may not remember, when we first went to town meeting to vote for the community center, we knew that the Chickering School debt would be coming off in 3 years. So to make it cash neutral to citizens of Dover, because that's an override, so that is outside of the tax levy, what we said is we would use our free cash to fund the first 3 years of the Carroll Community Center. So when the Chickering debt rolled off or completely matured, people's tax bill for the override portion would remain the same. So it's just a little reminder of where we are and what we're trying to do. So this year's budget has been very, very difficult as we pulled it all together. And I will share with you where we are today. This is by no means the final budget. Not everything has been voted on, but I thought it would be good to begin for us, especially in light of the open hearing being 3 weeks away, that we begin to look at this and figure out how we're going to present it to the town. So do I have the rights to share? Yeah. So I will share my screen. All right, so can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay. So what I tried to do was to take the budget, and this is all part of the budget model, which I think all of you have seen. And I went back so we could kind of see run rates. And I went back to 20 and I pulled it up into, large categories. The first is what I call general town operations. And it's just the operations of the town. It's like the Board of Selectmen's office, all that kind of stuff. Then it's the protective agencies, which is police and fire, public works, which is the DPW, health and human services, which is Board of Health, and then culture and recreation, which is really the library and park and rec. And these items gave me the total municipal budget. It's really, these categories are what it costs us to run the town operations. I then added education, debt and interest, insurance and pensions to get us to the total town operating budget, which is Article 4, which is what we all vote at town meeting. And as you can see, it has increased by 6.8%, which is a much larger number than what we've seen over the years. And this is down from the first pass at the budget. So I said, okay, well, what is driving this increase. And I tried to categorize it into buckets. So the first is what I would call just standard increases. So inflation, wages going up, those types of things, insurance and pensions. And then I looked at what are some of the, so this, the first column that I have standard, I would call this level services. This is what it costs us in the town to provide level services. I then went and I looked at, well, what are all the new items that are in the budget? So in this municipal budget, in the budget that is really town operations, that has increased by $418,000. And that is a really large number. So what is making that up? Well, there are a lot of new positions. And I have another sheet that I'll break those down for you. So all of this but some of those positions have been offset by the reduction in costs. So I wanted to show the reduction in costs as well. So if we drill down a little bit, I then went and I said, okay, so what makes up that 418,000 of additional costs? And again, I try to group it and put it into categories. So we are asking for funding of 233,000 for new positions related to basically the Dover Community Center. There is a position for a director, 2 custodians, and then also we have increased utility costs in the form of electric. However, those are offset by the decrease in oil. Then we have a few more then we also have costs that relate to the Board of Selectmen. So there are 2 positions that the Board of Selectmen are asking for. There's a finance director, there's a project manager. These items are actually offset by some expenses. So the finance director is going to be offset by $50,000 in consulting expenses. So as many of you know, Carl Valente has been acting on a part-time basis as our interim finance director. So we would reduce those costs and bring on a full-time person. The project manager was a position that was filled by Dave Sullivan a couple of years ago. We would like to refill that position. And the way we're going to fund this is to eliminate the IT analyst, which you see in the data processing budget. And then there was a benefits manager in the budget that we will not hire. So in effect, the salary asks that the Board of Selectmen are asking for increase the budget by 39,000 due to the offsets that will occur as well. There is $23,000 that's being asked for by the Conservation Commission because they need additional hours for consulting based upon work that's been done or the demand for work that's been done. Also, in order to have a viable on-call ambulance department, we increased the stipend, and that will cost us about $35,000. There will be a slight offset in revenue that comes in, but again, we have to keep those 2 things separate, and it certainly will not amount to more than $35,000. It's probably somewhere around 10,000. The DPW has also seen increases. The solar project will offset itself. However, there's been an increase in the cost of solid waste tipping and hauling, and that is offset by the maintenance costs that we saw on the roll-off, roll-on truck. So the net impact of that is 47,000, and that's just basically more tonnage, inflation. There's not much you can do about that. And then there's $50,000, which is being asked for additional paving that the head of the DPW believes that we need to maintain our roads. So when you break it down like this, it's 418,000, and that's a big ask for the town. In addition to that, the other piece that is driving our increase is debt and interest. So what we have done is, all of you know, we have a lot of capital requirements and infrastructure projects that we've had to do, Claybrook Road being one of them, which we did last year. So we bonded Claybrook Road, and we also bonded the additional 6.6 million in the overruns for the community center. And that has increased our debt costs by $500,000. And that, the Dover Community Center debt is being done over 20 years. So that's a smaller amount, but all of the capital that we are paying through for debt, we are floating debt for 5 years. So the principal and interest payments, even though the amount of debt isn't so large, because we're paying it back over 5 years, we're seeing a spike in that line item. And we're going to continue to see this go up slightly, because we're going to need to pay for some of our capital using debt. So we really need to be cognizant of this. And the plan was always to make sure that we do this within the tax levy. So what that means is we need our revenues from property taxes to cover this, because we do not want to ask for a Proposition 2.5 override. So what we need to do is we need to manage, again, all of this capital and stretch it out so that as debt matures, we can pay for additional stuff. So as a town, we're really at a crossroads. And I think we really need to be thinking about, are there ways right now to reduce this operating budget? So, for the Board of Selectmen, we will go over this at our next meeting, and I already asked the town administrator to think about, do we need all of these heads we're asking for right now? Like the community center is coming on board in October. Should we wait and see what we really need and not hire what we think we need? Should we wait and see how it operates so that we hire the right kinds of people? So we should also be thinking about, do we really need to bring all these additional heads on for the community center right now and ask for it in this budget? So I don't know, are there any questions, comments, ideas, how to reduce the operating budget?
Robin, that's a really great transparent presentation that you've come up with. It's certainly much clearer to me now than our initial review of it. So thank you so much for,
Right, but I'm
for
not
all that good
done.
work.
I know you'd like to get rid of me. So what I wanted to do, because I thought it was really, really important that everybody understands, because this is all cash based, what we try to fund every year. So it's not only Article 4, it's Article 5, it's
Right.
special articles. So
Right.
that's what I tried to do down below in the blue. So there's a madness to all my colors. So the blue is capital, and the special articles. And I made an assumption here. I assumed that some of capital would be funded through debt, and that all of the special articles would be funded by free cash. And the special articles total 1.1 million, and a big piece of that is 742,000, which is the free cash to fund the regional OPEB. So that's what most of the special articles are. So what I did then is I looked at the total operating budget, which is the 45 million. I took the capital budget less the piece of the capital budget that's going to be funded by debt. I added in the special articles, and that meant that we need to fund our budget this year, if it stays as is, with $48.6 million. And then I said, all right, well, I really need to reduce that amount by the free cash that we've already earmarked to reduce the budget this year. So, as you know, we always take an amount to reduce the tax rate. So that's what the 800,000 is. The 630 is the amount of principal and interest that is offsetting the Carroll Community Center debt. The 714,000 represents the free cash that we're going to use to offset some of the capital spend that we have. We're estimating we have about 70,000 in unpaid bills. We have all these special articles. We have the overlay. So we're basically going to use 3.5 million of free cash to offset the 48.6 million, which means we need to fund 45.7 million. And our tax levy, if it were maximized, is 43 million. We have local receipts and state aid, which brings us down to 46.5 million, which gives us this surplus of 1.3, which is what we want to see, because we don't want, again, we don't want to maximize the tax levy. But I would, last year, just to put this into perspective, we had 3.4 million of excess capacity in the tax levy. So we're reducing that by, substantially this year. So I really think we should be looking at this budget and making sure that everything we're asking for is really what we need, and we need now.
Robin, what drives the expectation of the tax levy going from 38 to 43 when it seems like it's gone up by $1 million or $2 million a year in prior years, by 5 now?
Right. So, right. And that's what's going to spike the tax rate. In prior years, first of all, our spend has been less, but also we have had excess capacity of around 3 million, like between 3.7 and 3.3. So that was a big piece of it. So our tax levy was higher, but we didn't tax at that maximum rate. So this is if we increase the rate to the maximum rate we could, it would be the 43 million.
Got it.
And you know what happens is that's that $14 per thousand. So what's very troubling to me now is we're going to see a bigger increase in that rate than we've seen over the last couple of years if the budget remains as is. And we'll go back and do that calculation. You know, this is the first pass at pulling everything together and for this year. And I really think going forward that your job as the Warrant Committee is very difficult to do unless you start to pull this together much sooner so that you understand the impact of all these asks. Because when departments come in one-off, I mean, none of this stuff seems to be that material, you know, but you add it all together and suddenly the impact is large. And we really need to manage the increase.
Yeah.
Robin, allowing for the fact that we need to manage the increase and that, you know, this doesn't look great. Given the amount of inflation we've had over the last 18 months, what do the select board think is a realistic increase in the budget?
You know, that's, I can't really answer because I am one of two. So, but I would say that 6.8% is too high. I mean, the other thing is the school, especially the Chickering side of the increase is very, very large. And it's been larger than what we've seen in the past. So what I want to better understand is that because of increases in out of district costs, and you know, will that be offset by state aid in the following year? So I need to touch base with Dawn. I just don't remember. Maybe one of you know what's driving that. You know, from a town perspective, Woody, you know, we negotiated our teachers' contract this year, and I'm sure everybody saw what happened in Newton. And you know, Dover and Sherborne and our educators have a really good relationship. And we worked hard to try, and we reached an agreement that was good for both sides, but it was a little higher than what we were expecting. But given the current environment, we got a really good contract.
We haven't gone over the Dover budget in a while, but when we did go over it with Dawn, my impression was that the wages and all were in the 3 to 4% range, but that there was a substantial increase in the out of district cost, and that changed, you know, between the 2 weeks. She sent us something, and the time we met with her, and she thought it was going to change again, but it felt like that was the biggest component of what they were presenting, was that the out of district cost, which hopefully we recoup.
Some we recoup about 70%. So you know, so if you see the increase, so the school increase is 981,000. To put that into perspective, if you take our tax levy and multiply it by 2.5%, our budget should only increase by about $1 million. And there is no way, you know, given inflationary pressures, given some of the things that are happening, that's the increase we could, you know, we can expect right now in this current environment, which is even more reason to make sure that we don't, for lack of a better word, you know, spend like drunken sailors, that we that we think long and hard, and we take smaller steps towards all of these FTE increases and some of these increases that are reflective in the budget. So I would like to go back and ask everybody to take a look at what they're asking for. I mean, also keep in mind that because this is municipal accounting, this can't be a lean budget. Because if it's a lean budget and some of these contingencies materialize, we have to have a special town meeting to get funds, you know, to cover those costs. So within this budget, there are already contingencies, and we usually see turnbacks of somewhere around 5%, and we use that number to offset the tax rate in a given year. And I think that's a good thing to do. You know, we're giving back to the taxpayers.
So Robin, just for your information, the submission that Dawn made on the public on Chickering, 5.2% was increase in salaries,
Okay.
and then the other big nuts were a 22% increase in tuition for
Out of
what do you-
district. Okay.
out of district tuition, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you,
So there isn't a lot of room there
Right.
for cutting back, because a significant part of that is out of our control.
right. And I'm not suggesting that there is, it's just making sure that we understand, you know, and I know Dawn and the school committee will do an excellent job explaining that. And
Yeah.
I just couldn't remember because I was just
Yeah,
having a hard time.
if you have a
looking-
look in the folder on
Okay.
submissions for this year, it's called Dover Public Schools submission. So you can see that, and I think that's pretty stable as far as Dawn was stating.
Okay, so you know, I think we need to go back and think about. And we have 2 or 3 weeks, you know, is this the budget we want to present right now at open hearing, or should we be sharpening our pencils before we go to open hearing? And
Right.
is this a good format to present the budget in? Is it transparent? Is it overly, is it not simple enough? So I would really, you know, like some feedback, because
Right.
really important to be transparent. I you know, I want to make sure that citizens understand what is driving the increase.
Right. Melissa, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think this is great. I appreciate all the work going into laying this out this way and kind of a very different way of comprehending what's going on. I had 2 kind of unrelated questions. The first is, do we think we'll have a sense of where fiscal 24 is trending by the time we get to the point of presentation for this?
Right, so I asked that question because I said, you know, look at the actuals and then look at what was approved at town meeting, right? And we know there are contingencies in fiscal year 24.
Mhm.
So, and I was told that we're tracking on schedule.
Okay,
So, but I agree. I think we need to look at that long and hard and make sure that that's really, you know, that's continuing to happen, because we're budgeting off of what was approved at town meeting, and there are contingencies even in what we forecast.
agreed. I think we're probably thinking along the same lines here. But I think right now it looks like a possible 7% increase, but it would be higher.
Exactly.
on
Right.
actuals potentially if we have the trend that we've had in prior years of turnbacks and
Right,
other things.
right.
So that
Right.
was my first question. The second one is more curiosity on the debt and structuring for 5 years on the payback for each of these, since this seems to be creating a kind of additional larger cost in the short term.
So I asked the same question because I said, why wouldn't you put debt in place that matured over the useful life of whatever you're buying? Like for me, the 1.8 million, and for Claybrook, why isn't that being done over 20 years? You know, just like the community center. And the answer that I got is when you try and float debt in such small amounts like we are, and it's primarily for capital, AAA rated communities do this in over less than 10 years because Moody's looks at how much debt you have outstanding that's over 10 years, and your rating gets hurt by that.
Okay.
So that was the answer I got, because to me, it doesn't make any sense. You know, the other thing we're trying to do here is there is some additional ARPA funds that we can probably use to offset the capital, which will be great, which means we don't, you know, we wouldn't do the debt. That's money that we already have. So we're trying to get confirmation from the Commonwealth that we can use those funds, and that will help offset the additional debt. And again, this is my guesstimate. Nobody's voted on it. I just looked at what we paid for in debt last year and kind of made the same parallels. And the free cash, again, you know, I don't know that all of the estimates are correct. I included estimates for all of the Warrant articles. I would expect this number to come down a little bit, but keep in mind that a big piece of this is the 743,000 funding the OPEB for the region.
Right.
Okay.
You know, also I quickly looked because I couldn't help myself. I was freaking out by what I was seeing. So then I tried, and this is just me. So then I tried to kind of look at the revenue sources and try and look at the trends over there. So I was playing around with that and just kind of doing run rates. And, you know, again, we need to get, we need to spend some more time on the revenue side of these projections, which Carl will do. Like for instance, the assessors have 100,000 of new growth again, you know, so when they only have 100,000 of new growth, then we have to tax, you know, we have to include that lowball estimate in our tax rate assumptions. Whereas if you look back over the years, you know, it's always in the $400,000 to $500,000 region, so. But, you know, we ask for estimates and that's what we get, so we have to work with that.
Where do we stand with free cash now? Has it been certified or about to be certified, or have we got a confident estimate of what it looks like?
So I messed around with that too, down below here. So what I did, so this is where we think free cash will end up. We expect to use this 3.5 million, which is that number there, at town meeting, So we will have 7 million in free cash. But ooh, I have a mistake here. But we need 4.6 million of that, right? To keep our AAA rating, but I have an error here because I don't have excess. And then I just went, and this is over 5 years, the OPEB and the capital, you know, and these are in a sense discretionary amounts, and we also know stuff's gonna come back. But I have a mistake here. Oh, shame on me. So I can't share that with you. It's not right.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of
So on a high
has
level
already
thing,
been-
Robin, looking for ways in which we might be able to cut back on this increase. Clearly, new positions are one thing that need to be looked at.
right.
The other thing are the proposals in the warrant articles for, say, Parks and Rec, pickleball courts and that sort of thing. Well, the problem is that with them, that they're mostly proposing designs for FY25, but that's
Right.
locking us in. If we agree to them, then the chances of them actually becoming projects are increased quite sharply, and so we're locking ourselves into even larger increases for next year for things like the pickleball courts and so on.
Right. Right.
So
So
I'm wondering how we can present that stuff pretty transparently so that people can see that some of this sort of nice to have stuff is you know what are the costs really truly associated with that, and what impact that's going to have on the tax levy.
right, and to be really honest, I was taken by surprise at the impact of the additional debt and interest. Because when I was modeling all of this, I was thinking it was over 20 years, and the impact is much smaller. And so, you know, we can't, the bottom line is we have to, we need to replace things, and we have infrastructure that needs to get replaced, but we're gonna have to push it out. We just can't do it all at once. And to your point, Cam, you know, I think the estimate for the pickleball courts is like $1 million. And then we have hail also coming down, and those types of things can only be done as overrides, you know, excluded debt.
Mm-hmm.
Because we just don't have the capacity. So if citizens want to have that, you know, it's gonna be an increase on your tax bill.
Right.
I mean, and that this to me, you know, and you saw the first number. I mean, this has come down because there
A lot,
was some
yeah.
double. Right, but still, it's
a substantial amount. Marty, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just, maybe I didn't understand, Robin, the rationale for why certain projects have to be amortized over a shorter period. How are you able to do, how is the town able to do 20 years on the building, the Carroll Center, and then a
well, the
much
Carroll Center, the bond amount was much larger. You know, it was like a 18.6 million dollar bond. So they said the market for smaller bonds, it's harder to go out longer. So what we're doing now is we're just bonding, which for municipalities is a really small amount. You know, like last year we bonded 2.2 million for capital. Like the 6.6 for the overage on the Carroll Community Center, we did that bond at 20 years, but it was the smaller pieces.
But those smaller pieces have a useful life of longer than the bond term, correct? Is that what I heard?
Well, so I am not an expert at this, Marty, but because you know, I know it's harder. It's harder to market smaller bond issuances, and you know, when I asked why we were not doing Claybrook Road, the 1.8 million over 20 years, I mean, that's an infrastructure project. I was told that we really don't want to have longer debt for these capital type projects. It's not looked favorably upon by Moody's, and I can get a better explanation than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine Moody's would want to understand the borrowing is matched to some asset. You know, maybe it's the market receptivity for a small size bond issue. They can only attract investors for a short time period.
Right. So I'll get a better explanation. You know, like I know when the town of Lexington goes out and they float bonds for their capital, you know, it's more like 10 million or, you know, but even they're only going out 5 years. So yeah, it's a conundrum to me because I was when I was, you know, when I was kind of doing trying to understand the numbers, because I was just amazed at how large this increase was. You know, I started modeling what I thought was the new debt, and you know, the amount I got for interest and principal and interest was maybe 150,000 less. So, you know, it wasn't significant. I mean, the big piece here is that 6.6 for the Carroll Community Center.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not, you know, again, what's really important is you really need to look at things in totality.
Right.
You know, if what you're saying is correct, Robin, would there be an ability for a town to use some of that free cash to advance on those smaller projects until you get up to a critical enough size and then go out for a longer term at a probably similar
Yeah,
rate?
I mean, so I had a different question. So you can't, municipal accounting is weird in there. So what you're suggesting, I'm pretty sure you can't do, but I'm wondering if we could just, like, if we know, like, we know now we have 20 million of capital over the next 5 or 6 years, you know, maybe it's only 15. So, you know, could we go out? I wonder, I don't know, it's a question I'll ask. Could we go out and do a larger bond issuance? But then the question is, you know, interest rates are kind of high now, and are we going to start seeing them come down? So should we be waiting a little bit before we go out and do a bond issuance? You know, so there's a lot of things to think about, but certainly worth thinking about all of these options. Because for me, this was just a bigger impact than what I was expecting.
Right.
No, I'd love to understand that more, Robin. If you're going to have a conversation with whoever it is the subject matter expert, I'm happy to participate in that.
Okay, that sounds great. I mean, Dave, do you know Evelyn?
Yeah, what's the specific question? Because I actually had my own.
Oh, do you know, like, is it harder to market a smaller bond that's going out long term, or?
It is, because you want a little bit of critical mass to actually get someone like Fidelity interested.
Okay.
But I can tell you that the vast majority of Dover's past debt has been bought by the Fidelity Mass Tax-Free Money Market Fund for the short, and then they go and take the bond fund for the long. And so, but my question was, you had said that Moody's would frown upon anything in excess of 10 years. Could we at least take this from 5 to 10 years, or is it already done and
No, it's
Five.
not, none of this is done yet. We're still, it's just modelings. And that's an excellent question. We could ask that.
Because you could literally, if you double your period, obviously your principal payments are going to go down commensurately.
Right,
And
so
we
you know
have a-
what we need to do is kind of model this debt waterfall, so to speak,
Right.
against the capital and see what makes the most sense. I was thinking about that today. We should try see how to match it best.
There's also a weird inversion to the yield curve where right now the shortest end, the first year or two, is got the highest interest rates.
I know.
And so if we could take advantage of years 5 through 10, there's significantly lower rates than the very short end. So
Yeah, although Lexington just closed a deal and I have to figure out how big it was. At 2.5%. And I'm modeling stuff at 3.3 because that's what I saw. So I need to understand how it was 2.5. You know, I was looking at municipal debt, Massachusetts. Again, you know, the 657 is Carl did that, but he's also making assumptions, so that may be a little high as well. But I think a really kind of good exercise, Dave, would be to do the stat waterfall and see what makes the most sense, especially given the inversion in the yield curve right now.
I agree. It would be very interesting, and we might get a pleasant surprise if we can stretch it even again to 9 or 10 years.
Right. But again, you know, I think it's really important to keep asking ourselves, is this, you know, we did defer a lot and we need to do it now, but we also need to be careful about, you know, the modernization of in the town is really important, but let's try see if we can get some efficiencies and maybe not hire everybody all at once.
Right. I have some ideas for you there, Robin.
Yeah.
I've got a 30 or 40 item list that's not for now, but for us to talk perhaps on Friday.
Okay. But you know, I don't know if this is a good way to present it. It's the only way that for me that I could understand what was going on. So, and I'm happy to put this in your Google Drive. You know, it's just the model you've already seen. If you can find any mistakes I made, I'd appreciate it.
No, that'd be very useful. Thank you, Robin. So in terms of next steps, we go back to Michael and ask him to get people to review their proposals with a view to
Right. Or I asked it
reductions.
to prioritize. I'm also gonna go and kind of talk to Park and Rec a little bit.
So the only question I have in terms of the presentation is that all of those sort of proposals that are coming out of the warrants, like the Park and Recs, and not that don't stand out here, and yet that stuff that clearly is a nice to haves that could be deferred.
Right, so the so there, I'm trying to see where I put the stuff. So this is what I assumed for the special articles. You know, that's the OPEB. Then we have, so basically what we're doing is we're moving money from free cash to stabilization. So that's what that 197 is. And then I put 25,000 for the citizens sidewalk. And I don't know who the point person is for Warrant, but he has not talked to
Steve,
the highway department. He hasn't gotten accurate proposals. So he really needs to get on the ball there.
Right.
And then, I don't know what Chris is thinking for the rail trail, so I put 100,000. And the housing task force, I think this will be less. So that's how I came up with that. Again, these are placeholders. I just had to put some numbers there so that
Right.
I could get a sense of what things looked like in totality.
Mhm. Yeah, I'd say that the sidewalk thing is going to be certainly a lot more than 25,000 from at least what Kevin seems to be projecting on the basis of Kenny's questions to him. I don't know whether you've seen that paper trail, Robin.
Right.
I could forward that over to you if you haven't seen it.
I saw I was here when he made his presentation.
No. Kate was sort of asking various questions of Kevin as to what he expects the cost to be, and that's certainly more than 25,000. So that's something we need to drill down on a little bit more too.
Right. So so my goal here was continue to refine these numbers are just preliminary. So
Right.
continue to refine this and the presentation so we have something very coherent for the open hearing.
Right. I think that's what we need to focus on now, is sort of going back and seeing where we can make some cuts to this that are reasonable and that make sense, and then also looking more at the debt questions that Dave and Marty were asking about.
Right.
So I think those are the areas we can explore. So the question is, how should we approach this? I'm not too sure on what the next step should be in this.
So you should have gotten an invite to a meeting for Thursday.
I did, and I accepted that. Melissa, are you able to make that meeting?
Yes, I am. Sorry, I had to unmute.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So we'll talk, we'll go through that again in the meeting. I think, for me, I'm gonna reach out to Park and Rec again and kind of talk through the operations of the community center, and then also that this rail trail thing. So.
Mhm. Right.
Again, Robin, if you would like, I can do this for another, 10 days? We could both meet with them if you'd like.
Okay, all right. But I'm trying to I don't want to repeat last year's open hearing because I felt as though the financial presentation wasn't transparent enough and lacking. But by the same token, I don't want to overcomplicate things. So I'm trying to find the right balance. So any input, the bottom line is we don't want huge spikes in the tax rate. And that's been the goal all along. And we also don't want to spend, like there's no tomorrow, because you always pay the piper. So we need to make sure that, that we're maintaining services, that, we are going through some massive changes. There are inflationary pressures that we've been seeing over the last couple of years.
Right.
But we need to make sure that that we continue to be fiscally responsible.
Does anybody else have any suggestions on next steps? I'm sort of all ears. So if people have got some ideas on how we can present this more transparently, that'd be greatly appreciated. And we also have to come up with some sort of division of labor between what the Warrant Committee presents and what the Board of Selectmen present, right?
You know, I know the school committee will do their presentation, which is really good. And I hope, you know, I'm concerned about these special warrant articles. I'm somewhat concerned about Park and Rec and the rail trail, because I haven't seen anything. I uploaded, I think I had 600 or 700 files, you know, all organized from everything I did. And I transferred all that to them to look through, because I have everything. And, you know, it's the town's information. I just happen to store everything electronically. So, you know, so I don't know what's going on there. Last I asked, they hadn't really figured it out.
Right. At least they have shown some flexibility. They want to break out the pickleball courts and the playgrounds into separate proposals. So I think that was helpful, because I think you know, the community who might support a playground could be different from the community that supports a pickleball court, and we might be able to sort of choose one rather than both or whatever. I don't know, but that's another area where we might be able to.
Playground or dump truck?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Maybe we
Okay.
could sand in the dump truck and they could play in there too. Would be lots of fun.
Okay, are there any other questions that people have?
Well, I think I only have one question, and I think Robin already answered it. And Robin, it sounds like you're a staff person. Tremendous amount of work went into that presentation.
Absolutely.
Just if I may, I saw you have, the town has about 10.5 million, is that right, in free cash at the moment? Or approximately,
Right,
okay. And Hale isn't part of this, I gather.
but you have to remember, of the 10.5, 4.5 needs to remain as unallocated free cash.
Yes, I know, yeah.
We already have earmarked a whole bunch, so there's not a lot over. I
Yeah,
mean,
no, it was a very clear presentation. And as far as the rail trail is concerned, I did, the Open Space Committee considered trying to do something with that. Ultimately, we did not vote on it, and it was deemed that Park and Rec was more eager to work on that, since we don't have a staff, as you know, in the Open Space Committee. I did talk to Mark Ahuli about all that in January when he had to get the placeholder for the rail trail, and as you have discussed now, it's sort of vague, but as you know, a lot of people are using the Medfield Rail Trail and the Needham Rail Trail, and the 4 miles in Dover is not connected. So, you know, people are complaining, what's going on, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not saying do it. I actually think the budget is almost in crisis. I mean, I'm a banker. I listened to your presentation. I'm glad to hear that certain positions are not perhaps going to materialize. But yeah, I mean, what can I say? Thank you. It was very informative.
you know, I will tell you, Justine, I did walk on the Medfield Rail Trail, and then I walked on Dover Conservation Land, and I walked right into Dover Center, and it was awesome. And it's well marked, so you can go to the end of the Medfield Rail Trail, you know, you cross over Hunt Drive, and I
Yeah,
was thinking
you
to
can do
myself,
it.
wouldn't it be wonderful to have a rail trail going all the way?
Well, as I say, one of the members on our board, Upper Charles's board, is Christian Donner. And he was one of the major, he's a Medfield resident. He was one of the major forces behind the Medfield Rail Trail, which is a lot shorter, I might add, than Dover's. But I did think the two comments that Christian has said at our Upper Charles board meeting is that Dover, at the time, there was a different group on the Board of Selectmen. And one of the people who currently was there was dead set against the rail trail. So the scope of work was, from Christian's point of view in Dover, tremendously over-designed. And the
Oh, yeah.
second comment he has said over and over again is that the DPW in Medfield did most of the construction, and they did it over the weekend at time and a half, and that was much cheaper than going out to get the bids and then having to pay the prevailing wage and all that kind of stuff that you have to do as a municipality.
So in the many files I gave over, I had talked to Medfield and I got their plan and it's in there. And actually Chris Dwelly and I at one point went to speak to Medfield because they also got grants, which
Yes.
which
Yeah.
we applied for and were denied because we were not connecting to.
You were not what?
Connecting.
Oh, yeah, at the time.
Right, so we were not eligible for the grants.
Right.
But they also said that, you know, they would be open back then, they were open to doing an intermunicipal agreement with Dover because they bought some of the equipment. So they said, you know, they would be willing to work with us and maybe help or do some of the work, or we could rent the trucks from them and stuff like that.
Well, I know Christian is very eager to help Dover do whatever, and you know, he's an IT guy. He's not in construction or anything like that. So there's, as far as I know, there's no conflict of interest or self-aggrandizement or whatever.
Is he one of the I call them the gang? The
The
gang
what?
that has the gang. It's the gang, and it's the Medfield Rail Trail gang, and it's these guys with their rakes, and they're always cleaning up, and
No, he's
very cute.
Yeah, very involved. Very involved. Yes.
So I'm willing to get a jacket if I can be, you know, I'm willing to sign up if I get a sweatshirt.
Well, let him know.
Dover, not in Medfield, for Dover. I'm
Of course.
willing to. But it's amazing, you know, people rake horse poop off the trail. Like they ride, there is nothing, it's phenomenal. So,
Definitely.
all right,
That's
well,
good.
enough about that. I'm sure
Yeah.
everybody needs to eat dinner. Okay.
Okay, then I think we'll continue this discussion and hopefully come up with something that would that we can present to open meeting that makes it clear to everybody what we're confronted with. But thank you so much, Robin, for that. I really do appreciate that.
My pleasure. Just remember there are errors in it most likely, and it's not final.
Yeah,
But
no,
it's probably in the ballpark.
It's a work of progress, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's move on to other stuff now. The minutes of the last two meetings need to be reviewed. Does anybody have it? Let's start with the February 7th one. Has everybody had the opportunity to actually read the minutes or not? Or do you need a couple of minutes to quickly go through them? Sarah, you're practiced eagle eye. Have you got any thoughts? You're on mute.
I'm quickly just glancing over them to refresh. If you could bear with me 2 seconds and I will have some feedback.
Okay. Everybody else might use the time to have a look at them. Peter distributed those And hopefully we can agree on it. Did anybody else have any comments on the 2nd of the 7th of February minutes? No. Okay. Have you got your review there? Sarah?
Okay, so this is super small. Fire and ambulance budget, it says the total for fire and ambulance is 188,236, comma, but should be 0.00. Again, super small typo.
Mhm.
And
But
then
Peter's not here. I don't know if anyone's gonna make these tweaks to the
oh, I
actual
know.
record.
Do you want me to? I can email you.
Did you have any other ones?
Maybe for
Sarah?
my edification, but not necessarily a correction under the redesign of the stormwater handling system. What is ARPA grants?
ARPA.
Right. What is it?
It's the, oh God, what does it stand for?
Right. Sorry, I'm just not familiar with the acronym. I trust that it means something very governing body in nature, and I'm not going to ask to question it, but I just wanted to know for my own edification.
It's the American Resource Plan Act resources.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So
Rob.
it's basically state grants to the town,
Right.
right?
I'm unclear and happy to have anyone else weigh in here. If under the selectmen budget, to me, it reads unclear if the $16,000 for replacing the fuel storage tanks is included in the $20,000 for the protective agencies building HVAC and locker room, or if that's an additional expense.
Sorry, where is that, Sarah?
Selectmen budget.
Mm-hmm. Possibly to replace the fuel storage tanks, right? Well, it is an additional expense in the way I'm reading it.
So is that 16K included in the 20?
No, it's plus.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, with your suggested minor modifications, Sarah, are there any other modifications, or can we vote on this? Do I hear a motion?
I'm moving that the minutes from February 7th be adopted as modified.
A seconder?
Second.
Thanks, Marty. And let me do a quick call. Woody? Yep. Peter, Jerry?
Aye.
Melissa? Marty?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Janet? And Steve?
There that day, so I was going to abstain.
Sorry?
I wasn't there that day, so I was going to abstain.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Melissa, were you at that meeting or not? Not sure you were either. Let me have a look at what we say.
I think I was
Yeah,
off
you're
camera.
absent too, yeah.
Oh, was I? Okay.
So yeah,
Well, then
you abstain
I'll
too.
abstain then.
And so I'll add my vote to approving it. So let's declare them approved. And now for the I think it's the 14th.
We had 2 abstains, Cam, just so I know for the minutes. We had 2 abstains. Is that right?
Yeah,
And
that's correct. Janet and Melissa.
or Janet. All right.
Okay, and now for the 14th. This is the school budget one. Oh, it's full of numbers. Has anybody spent some time going through this to check it, cross-check it?
I have one item here. The increase So under budget assessment, in Dover's assessment is stated as 313,187. So plus 2.42%, but it seems to be a decrease from the V10 budget, which was 466.82 higher. And
Right.
I'm wondering if there could be some clarification to that discrepancy or to provide more context.
Okay, would you care to just put some wording in to that effect?
Sure. Do you want me to email
Sure.
this to you, Steve? And then I'll let you decide if it deems your approval for
Well,
correct.
why don't we pass it over to Peter, because he's the one
Yeah.
that sort of manages the minutes.
That was all. That was my only question I had.
Yeah, okay, great.
Should we push on the minutes potentially for the 14th due to the complexity and the likely change to them?
Yeah, sounds like a good idea to me. So why don't we do that, and we'll look at that more thoroughly before the next meeting. Okay, so let's pass on that. Is there any other business that we need to address tonight?
Cam, I think Robin sort of touched on when going through the whole budget, but the Conservation Commission had said that they do have a budget line item going from 65,000 to 88,000.
Yeah, so it was additional 23,000 of additional
The consulting.
consulting.
Yeah, so they
Mhm.
it's just
Yeah.
that they want John was
Thanks, Jan.
go up, but that was the
Mhm. And Janet, I'm wondering if you could sort of act as the sort of liaison with Anna Nagy on her petition, just so we can prepare her for the open meeting and make sure she's got her slides and everything sorted out and ready to go and all of that sort of stuff. Would that work?
Sure. Okay.
Thank you. I don't think it's going to be a lot of work, just and particularly Anna seems to be very well organized, so I'm sure that won't be a big problem.
I think Steve's point should be her first bullet, no budget impact.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So that's all I have. The question is for our next meeting. I think we really should meet next week and review what we've managed to accomplish in our assessment of the budget. So if people don't object, then let's plan on a meeting for next Wednesday as well. We've only got really two full weeks before open hearings, so we're going to have to start tying some bows and getting things organized.
And Cam, maybe after the meeting tomorrow, we could even have sort of a template of the budget overview for open hearings.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful. Yeah, agreed.
It would be good to go through all the special articles next week.
Yeah, that sounds like an idea. Okay, then that's all I had. Any other business that anybody wants to raise? Then do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Melissa. There's always a bit of competition for that. Okay, I guess we can vote by acclamation and leave it at that. Thank you very much for everybody coming. Much appreciated.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good
Cam.
night.